Welcome, Dr. Ram Madhav. It's really not only a pleasure but also an honor to receive you here. I know you have a very busy schedule, but I had booked you nearly 1 month back, and since then I had been reminding almost every day, sir, November 1, you have to be in Calicut. So thank you for keeping your word. I know you had to go, you had to catch a flight today, but all the same, thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure. I have always held the Manorama group in high esteem. You maintain certain standards in media, and that's why when you invited me, I thought I should try my best to come over. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So, I was thinking, at one point of time I wrote also, when you say intellectual politician, I think often that is an oxymoron. But because if you are a politician, you can't be an intellectual. And if you are an intellectual, you can't be a politician. But there are few people who are exceptions to this. And I think Dr. Ram Madhav is one of the foremost examples, who is a politician, who has been driving on the right side of the road, if I may say, of the political driveway, but at the same time an intellectual also. He thinks, and he is more of a thinker than an active politician. So, Dr. Madhav, I'll start with our cultural nationalism. You have been a strong proponent of cultural nationalism. In the last 10 years of Sri Narendra Modi's government, we have seen its rise. Can you explain what it entails? Is it different from the ideals of our founding fathers?
Firstly, there are so many myths and misconceptions about this whole idea of cultural nationalism. And this is not new, this is not unique to India either. If you see the conservative movements in Europe, if you see their history, they are all based on certain cultural symbols, cultural notions, cultural beliefs that they considered national identities as primarily cultural civilizational identities. That's how the conservative movement grew in Europe for last 300 years. Now, may I tell you, in 1941, if I remember correct, Churchill and Roosevelt meet in US to decide that together they should take on Hitler. At the time, the statement they made was that we have to make the world safer for nations to take forward the ideology of Christianity. Now, do we say that Churchill and Roosevelt were Christian communalists? No. When they talked about it, they were talking about those European people's cultural, historical, civilizational identities, which were rooted in Christianity, incidentally. So when we talk about cultural nationalism in India, we have to understand it from that perspective, that India as a country has a very distinct cultural identity. We believe that that identity forms the basis for India's unity, India's oneness, India's basic national identity. That becomes a national identity. Now you mentioned about fathers of our constitution making. It depends on whom you consider as the architects of our constitution. Of course, you remember Nehru and Ambedkar, certainly. But there were many others at that time. For example, Gandhi himself espoused the very same ideas that we talk today. He always stood for India's civilizational greatness, cultural greatness. He always advocated it very firmly, strongly in his speeches, in his articulations. So much so that after Gandhi's death, when we actually completed the draft constitution in November 1949, one member, incidentally he was from Andhra Pradesh, he gets up and asks a very pertinent, very poignant question. He says, this is a wonderful constitution we have made, but where is Gandhi in it? You know, this conversation you should read. Where is Gandhi? Gandhi is missing in it. Meaning, Gandhi, the ideals that he represented, we could not fully, probably articulate effectively. Does it mean this constitution was not complete? No, it's a very good constitution we created. Very effectively, it served our country for last 75 years and it will continue to serve us. It is the basis for our national political unity. But this country has a cultural unity also. Basis for that cultural unity is what we call as cultural nationalism.
See, since you mentioned the meeting between Churchill and Roosevelt, so it must have been somewhere in Europe. Yeah, but we have been seeing the rise of conservative parties in the last few years, especially in Europe, and also the conservative movement in America. And Dr. Madhav, you were recently in Washington, D.C., addressing a world conclave on conservatism. That is something very strange to us because we haven't heard much about it. Can you tell us more about it? What that sort of a movement entails?
No, just as I mentioned earlier, conservative movement as a particular belief system in the historical, cultural, civilizational, traditional, nativist identities of the peoples has had a history of more than 300 years. It's a big movement in Europe. It was juxtaposed against the liberal movement, which believed that the so-called cultural, historical, religious identities are not good for societies. We should build a very liberal identity which is trans-cultural, which is trans-religious, which doesn't get into these things. But there remained a very strong movement which believed that family, God, religion, nationality, patriotism, these things are very important for any society. There is one belief system which believed in those 5-6 things. That is what is called conservative movement in Europe. Now, those conservatives come together. They are today a rising force in the world. They were a big force until the Second World War. Churchill himself was a conservative. I mean, he came from that background. But after the Second World War, the liberals tried to project all these ideas as retrograde. If you talk about religion, you are a communalist. If you talk about culture, you are going backwards. You are a fundamentalist. So they gave very negative branding to the conservative ideas. It continued for some time, but every idea has a shelf life. Conservative ideas have longer shelf life. They are coming back. Today, country after country in Europe is returning to those ideas. They are represented by certain conservative political parties. Those parties are coming to power in country after country. Even in countries like America, today people like, Donald Trump, whether we like those statements or not, he says, I want to make America great again. He is talking about American nationalism, very territorial, very, limited to the American people. I mean, those ideas were rejected earlier, saying that no, this is all, we should be internationalists. We should not talk too much about nationalism and all that. But today those ideas are coming back. So that conservative movement, which has always existed in Europe, it receded a little bit because of the liberal onslaught for about 5-6 decades. It is now making a comeback in country after country. We sometimes connect with them because we also believe in many things that they believe, not necessarily everything. After all, we come from a different background, they come from a different background, but there are certain areas of convergence. We try to work on those areas where we can work together.
Thank you. You mentioned family values particularly. I noted that. So family values, yes, but at the same time, in the same European countries where the conservatism, as you say, is on the rise, we are also hearing of LGBTQ plus rights, same-sex marriage, marital rape as an issue here. And so how do you, negotiate these things? And also, you have been with the RSS for so many years, and the RSS also, does it have a problem in negotiating on these issues, or do you have a very clear directional path for that?
You see, conservatives in the West believed in family as an institution, whereas liberals believed that family is a very restricting institution. Individual is important, not family. That is how liberals looked at it. The extreme form of it is what is today called wokeness or wokeism, you call it. This is the extreme liberalism. But conservatives always wanted to uphold family system, family values. I may remind to you, the year 2000 was declared by the then Pope as the year of family. He gave a call to the Christian world or Catholic world, you want to say, that we have to bring back family values. We have to again restore that great institution of family. That is the only way to build a good society. So they have their challenges, they have their own ways of trying to restore those values. Now, what is the challenge before the family institution, whether it is in Europe or in India? You are right. Today there are certain very unique questions are coming up. Now in USA and UK and countries like that, the schools, many schools have a admission pro forma which says the child can go and identify his or her sex. Parents cannot do that. You can't say that my child is a boy or a girl. It has to be decided by that boy or girl. He will decide or she will decide. Now he or she can go to the school and declare that I am a cat. The school will write that this so and so is a cat. Then for that cat, there is a pooing place. There is a separate place. This is the extent to which they are going in the name of individuals and individual identity. Now we say this kind of wokeism is actually madness. There is an issue with LGBTs. It's a separate issue. LGBTs, certain sexual orientation has always existed in our society. Take the Indian Hindu history, Hindu mythology. Bruhannala is a character. Sikhandi is a character. They were transgenders. They existed. But they were exceptions in a society. We said, yes, some people have certain proclivities, certain orientations. How to deal with? They themselves will decide, our society will decide. Our parents will decide. But we never said that you have to outcast them, you have to throw them out. On the contrary, when Sikhandi was there on the chariot, Bhishma had to leave his weapons because he had a vow. So we gave them whatever space is legitimately allowed for whether LGBTs or others. We never discuss. In fact, since we mentioned about RSS, in our Indian Criminal Code, CRPC, there used to be a section called Section 377. This Section 377 used to penalize LGBTs. If a student is found to be indulging in gay relationship, he can be arrested and prosecuted. It was the RSS leadership which came forward and said, no, penalizing is wrong. Decriminalize it. It is an activity that needs to be counseled, that needs to be addressed by society, by family, by religious institutions, but not penalizing. So because of the suggestion from our side and many others in the society, LGBT, that clause 377 was removed by the BJP government in 2017. So there are ways of looking at these challenges that we face. The best way is to strengthen our family institution. That's why in RSS we started a new wing called Kutumba Prabodhan. The Kutumba Prabodhan, the whole idea is, let us strengthen the institution of family. We can address all these challenges. And in the West also, that is the challenge. That's why the Pope had to give a call for year 2000 as the year of the family.
Let me now take you to your book, 2022, you wrote the book, The Hindutva Paradigm. Now the word Hindutva and also the word nationalism is now often being used interchangeably in you. Could you clarify that? How you look at these two concepts?
Okay. When we use the word Hindutva, we generally tend not to use it in a religious sense. We use it in the sense of this country's national identity. It is, as I said, we don't see it just as a political identity, it is also a cultural identity because this nation existed for many thousands of years. Just now I was told that when Vasco da Gama arrived in India, his first arrival was near Calicut. If India were, when was this? This was in the 16th century, isn't it?
15th century. End of 15th century.
End of 15th century. End of 15th century he came. In end of 15th century, did we have this constitution? But then did we say that Vasco da Gama came to Calicut? No, we said Vasco da Gama came to India, he landed at Calicut. What was that India in the 15th century? That was the cultural India. There was no political India at that time. The Jamorins were ruling here. There were other kings in Thiruvananthapuram. There were 500 and plus kings all over the country. Yet we considered it as one country, one nation. What was that identity? That we call as our cultural nation. That we call in RSS as Hindutva. This cultural national identity, we call it Hindutva. But this, when we say Hindutva, we recognize the fact that that Hindu means a conglomerate of many religions, many faiths. You know, in India, one beauty is that we have so many different religions here. It's a multi-religious country. But some people use the wrong word multicultural. It's not multicultural. It is multi-religious, but one culture. If you simply identify song and dance and food and language as culture, every 200 miles it changes. What you eat in Kozhikode, people in Thiruvananthapuram may not eat. But you still are one culture. There can be any number of subcultures. But culture remains one. Culture is a value system in which all of us believe. We all believe in one God. We all believe, that God, all-pervasive God. We believe in goodness to others. We believe in seva. We believe in sacrifice. There are certain values we all believe. That is what is the cultural identity of this culture. That is what is the culture of this country. That we call as Hindutva. One may say that no, Hindutva means it is a religious identity. Then one may want to call it Bharatiyata. No problem. If somebody wants to call it Indian, no problem. Content should not change. Name can change. Label you can change. But content should be that ancient value system that this country stood for. If we are standing for it, that is Hindutva, that is culture, that is Indian, that is Bharatiya. As far as RSS is concerned, in that context, we use that word.
Thank you. So, since you mentioned that this can be used interchangeably, at least to raise the comfort level of the minorities, wouldn't you be using Bharatiyata or nationalism?
No, all the RSS affiliated organizations use Bharatiyata only. What is BJP? What is, the student wing of RSS is called Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad. The trade union wing is called Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh. As I said, political party calls itself as Bharatiya Janata Party. That's why I said this confusion is created deliberately by our adversaries. But for us, we say you use Bharatiya, you use Hindu, you use Sanatana. No problem. But the essence should be that we respect the age-old cultural continuum of this country. So we use Bharatiya very, very liberally. In fact, the RSS prayer, every day we pray, it ends with one slogan, Bharat Mata Ki Jai. We don't say Hindu Mata Ki Jai. So we know that Bharat, Hindu, they represent the same thing.
Yes, it's in the terminology. So when you use Bharatiyata, yes, there can be an inclusive. But when you use the term Hindutva, it seems exclusivity. So that is the comfort level I was talking about.
No,
or discomfort level.
May I tell you?
Yes.
May I tell you? Mahatma Gandhi, since I mentioned about him as one of those icons of cultural nationalism earlier, Mahatma Gandhi, throughout his life, used Bharatiya word only. We are Indians, we are Bharatiyas. Yet you know what he was branded by Jinnah? He was a camouflaged Hindu. That was the branding of Gandhi. So, problem is with the adversary. Whatever language you use, as I told you, the BJP uses the language Bharatiya Janata Party. But was it not for many, many decades branded as a communal party? So, the whole issue is with how you understand these things. Sometimes I would agree to some extent. I sometimes on a lighter vein say the RSS and the organizations, because of the way they articulate, sometimes it becomes very difficult to understand, very easy to misunderstand.
Okay. Yes.
So people tend to misunderstand these things, but irrespective of those words, The content is, as I mentioned earlier, it's about cultural identity of this nation. Words are not the issue really.
Yes, so it's an issue of communicating with the people. You should remember Gandhi, he also said, Ishwar Allah Tere Naam. So that sort of a language is a little more...
But did it help him? He used it. He prayed till the end. But still in front of his own eyes, country was partitioned. Those who do not want to listen, they branded him as a Sanatani Hindu. So, we have to be clear that we should, first of all, agree on the principle that we are one people, irrespective of our religion. We are one people. That is what we call as Hindutva or Bharatiyata. Use any word.
Now we'll go to another plane. You have engaged with diplomats and foreign leaders. You have been doing, and in fact, I think next week you are going to, and in a day or two, you are going to Moscow. You were in Washington a few days back. So, like that, you have been engaging, and also with the topmost leaders of those countries and all. How do they perceive the shifts that are happening in India, the political, also the rise of India? Does it give them a discomfort, or how do they perceive that?
No, to many in the world, there is that famous A.L. Basham's book,
Wonder that was.
India, the wonder that was. For many in the world, India is a big wonder. It's actually a mini universe. When we tell them that if elections are held in India, we use 1 million polling stations and 1 billion people vote, they will collapse. They can't imagine that a country of that magnitude would exist. So for the world, India has always been a big wonder. But the world is also closely watching the transformation that is taking place in India. After 1947, in the first 6 to 7 decades, India traveled in a particular direction, what we used to call as a direction of, forgetting one's own self and assuming that we have to ape the other countries, the Western powers, to get some, respect in the world. For the first time, a new thought process has been introduced or probably encouraged in the country, that India has to stand up on its own feet, on its own identity. You have to assert your cultural, civilizational greatness, which many countries in the world do. Like, when China today asserts its authority, it doesn't assert only the economic or technical authority, technological authority. It asserts its civilizational authority. It starts, Confucius clubs all over the world. Do you know China started 500 Confucius clubs? Who was Confucius? Confucius was a 2000-year-old Chinese philosopher. Suppose we start 500 Chanakya clubs in the world. Our communist friends will pounce on us. Our liberals will pounce on us. You are promoting, religious nationalism in the country. Yeah, this is the cultural identity of this country. So world over countries do that. We are now doing that. We are asserting our cultural civilizational identity today. That world is very closely watching. But more importantly, India is rising as an important economic and strategic power in Asia. In fact, in Indo-Pacific region, Indian Ocean region. And it is this region which has emerged as the most happening region in 21st century. That's why world is watching this leadership. India has a very strong leadership today. That strength is also today watched and acknowledged by the world. May I quickly add one line, because something very interesting happened a few days ago when the Chinese side agreed with our Indian side to withdraw their forces, which is called in military language a disengagement. Disengagement means they are going back. They are asking us also to go back. They demolished or dismantled their structures that they built on the disputed area. Do you know, China has never done it with any other country. They never did it with India also in the past. India-China border dispute is not for the first time. It is not new. It has been happening since 1962. Not once did Chinese agree to go back or dismantle what they constructed. For the first time, they were made to do that. I'm not doing any chest thumping. It's not about that. Just to put it as a matter of fact reality, today we have that kind of a strong government which engages with them diplomatically, very proactively, but it also stands very firm on the ground, securing every inch of our territory. That is the kind of introduction of India that the world is experiencing today. We are standing on our own today. It's called strategic autonomy, we call it. We refuse to take sides in Ukraine-Russia war. We refuse to take sides in Israel-Palestine war. We stood on the ground that we will work for peace. That strength is what world is watching, and many countries are ready to stand behind India today.
We started this conversation with that oxymoron, intellectual politician. Now, I've been engaging you till now as an intellectual. Now let me ask you a few questions for a politician. You played a key role in the elections that happened in Jammu and Kashmir recently, and also in the elections that took place 10 years back in 2014. So 2 elections, one after the other in Jammu and Kashmir, you played 2 roles. But there is a major difference. In 2014, it was with the Article 370 there, and now without the Article 370 there. So how do you perceive, notice the shift in the attitude of the people, and what is the political difference also?
So, I have enough experience with Jammu and Kashmir state, especially with people of Kashmir Valley also, to make this statement. Don't believe in what the leaders in Srinagar tell you. In the Kashmir Valley also, majority people don't care about 370 anymore. They just don't bother about it. Even when they talk about it, they talk only in the context that it is our state, we should be able to rule our state. A very genuine demand. The state was under the president's rule for 5 years, since 2019 till 2024. Now elections were held, a government is in place. People generally are happy with the way things are developing in the state, in that Jammu Kashmir Union territory. The politicians want to tell you, no, this vote is against the Delhi's decision of abrogation of Article 370, nothing like that. Do you know the NC party, National Conference, which is ruling party, it went to polls saying that we will bring 370 back. 23% people voted for them. We went to people saying that 370 will never come back. 26% people voted for us. Who stands for India? The Kashmiris stand for India. Jammu people are with India. So that is a very important development that has taken place. People have accepted the new status. They are ready to live under the no 370 status for next any number of years. But about the election, I have to say something very important. This is a very, very significant election in the sense that all sections of the Kashmir society have happily come forward and participated in the election. I had dealt with that state for many years. There used to be groups which would boycott every election. Even if you hold a panchayat election, they would boycott it. They will say, no, we won't accept Indian constitution, so we won't recognize this election. But do you know that recent parliament election, the chairman of Hurriyat conference, Maulvi Mirwaiz Umar Farooq, he used to lead the boycott campaign in the past. Hurriyat used to lead the boycott campaign. Mirwaiz issued a statement just before the parliament election saying that no, boycott has no meaning. Our people are mature people. We want them to participate in the elections. First time, boycott. Those traditional boycotters said no boycott. Now this assembly election, Jamaat-e-Islami, the one party which always followed the diktats from Pakistan, never participated in election. Not only not participated, it always used to threaten people. If you go and vote, you will face the consequences. As a result, where it had its strongholds, voting percentages used to be abysmally low, 2%, 3% voting used to happen. But what happened this time, you know? they issued a statement saying that we have faith in Indian electoral process. It is transparent, it is peaceful, so we want to encourage people to join this election process. Jamaat-e-Islami joined the election process. They are a banned outfit, yet 11 of their people contested in the election. They encouraged people to take part in the election. The result is highest voter turnout happened in Jammu and Kashmir election this time. You might have heard about complaints about elections in Haryana, but not a single complaint about elections in Jammu and Kashmir. So it's a greatest success of our election commission, greatest success of our government, a greatest message that Jammu and Kashmir is now fully an integral part of India. Peaceful elections happen, elected governments come to power there, and this is a message to the whole world and a slap on the face of our neighbor, which always tried to disrupt the democratic process in Jammu and Kashmir.
All the same, Dr. Madhav, the results were not favorable to your party. So how do you explain that?
Okay, so we got highest number of votes in the state. We secured the highest number of votes. But democracy functions in such a way that we had the second highest number of seats. So we are happy to be in the opposition. We congratulated the National Conference leader, Mr. Omar Abdullah, for securing required numbers to form the government. He formed the government. Unfortunately, the mandate reality is such that in that government, very little representation is there from Jammu. There is only one independent MLA who was taken into the cabinet as a minister. One MLA from Hills was taken. But largely, Jammu could not be accommodated because of the electoral reality. Jammu wholesale, Jammu voted for BJP, and we are in the opposition. So it's a very peculiar situation. We are sure that the Chief Minister understands the situation and he gives proper attention to Jammu also. Just because Jammu is not representing in the government, obviously he is the Chief Minister for the entire Jammu and Kashmir, 115 million people of Jammu and Kashmir. We hope that he will pay enough attention to Jammu also. In any case, our 29 MLAs will always be there to stand up and ensure that Jammu is not neglected or treated indifferently.
We often say in the political and the media circles that the BJP wants to have a Hindu chief minister in Srinagar ruling from there. So you mentioned about the 29 MLAs. How soon do you think one of them would be a chief minister?
Let me make it clear. I mean, factually, let it be corrected. The BJP has never said it. There could be a desire in the people that, after all, the state has Muslims and Hindus both. Why not one day a Hindu be a chief minister? There could be a feeling among some sections in the society. As far as the BJP is concerned, those who get good mandate will form the government and they will have the chief minister of whoever they elect as the chief minister. What is important in that state is, until 370 existed, our highest priority used to be how to make sure Jammu and Kashmir is completely integrated with the rest of the country. That used to be our priority. Today, 370 is not there and Jammu and Kashmir constitutionally is fully integrated with India. But today, one more priority for us is how to integrate Kashmir with Jammu. And Jammu and Kashmir, people of both regions should live together as one people, as one state. So that is the priority. So Jammu also should get good recognition. Jammu also should get good, participation in the government. That is how that feeling that we are all one people, one state can be encouraged, can be enhanced in the state. That is our priority. Which religion will have the chief minister, which will not have, is a very secondary question. But may I tell you, since you raised this issue, from 1952, the first elections, to you take the 2024, this election, Jammu Kashmir has had, chief ministers changing for 14 times. 14 times CMs have changed. Only once there was one Jammu chief minister. Once, Ghulam Nabi Azad. And Azad Sahib is also from the hill area of Jammu, Doda Kishtwar region. So it always from two families, Abdullah family or Mufti family. That can change one day. There can be a chief minister also going from Jammu. That kind of a situation also can come. Like, if you talk about your state, you may want sometime a good chief minister coming from the north, from this region, from south, from Trivandrum, from central, from Kochi. You expect that you have people from all regions. So similar such sentiment does exist in Jammu and Kashmir. That should become a reality at an appropriate time. But all that depends on how the numbers work out in the end.
Now let me take you further back to the 2024 general election, the Lok Sabha elections. We heard of certain differences between the RSS leadership and the BJP leadership. Do you think that affected the party's performance, the BJP's performance, especially in Uttar Pradesh?
No, first of all, this whole story of differences between RSS and BJP is a good fodder for you all, good airtime for you. You can have a number of debates and all that. But I tell you, I am from both. My roots are in RSS. Today I am in BJP. There is no such thing called big differences and all. Two different organizations. They are not one and the same. They are two different organizations. One working in a non-political area. One working purely for the politics and elections and power and all these things. So there will be issues that occasionally they have to discuss between themselves. That keeps happening between RSS and BJP. But there is no such thing called big differences. So we won't work for the BJP. We are sitting at home. No such thing. I am the standing example. I was in the RSS. Just 2 months ago, with the approval of the RSS, I came back to the BJP. If there were differences, why would I come back? How would I come back? But having said it, while talking about elections, I must alert you to one reality. The RSS, at the time of elections, does only one thing. It tries to reach out to people, actually two things. One is to educate people about the real issues. What happens in Indian elections is people tend to vote in the name of caste, in the name of religion, things like that. Those may not be the real issues. Real issues could be different. So in a given state, what are the real issues on which people should think and vote very responsibly? That is one education aspect RSS does. And the second thing is, RSS always tries to ensure that 100% voting happens. People don't sit at home saying that all candidates are bad, all parties are bad. We have this, election vairagya. When elections come, we suddenly get some vairagya. Kya fayda hai? What's the use? All are bad. RSS says no. At the time of elections, you should use your franchise diligently. Okay, if you don't like anybody, you have an option. None of the above. Nota, it's called. Nota is there. But not that I am encouraging nota. No. In fact, there may be a situation when Seshan Saab was the chief election commissioner. He had this idea that we introduce nota. He introduced nota, none of the above button. One day somebody asked him, sir, what happens if nota wins in a constituency? What should we do? Like majority people vote for nota, none of the above. So Seshan Saab gave a very funny reply. He said, in that case, we should hold the elections once again and none of the above should be allowed to contest. None of these above fellows should contest. So we have to find ways, but people should go and vote. Only these two things RSS does.
Now this is the age of Instagram and instant definitions and all that. And also at the end of usually a quiz program, there is this rapid fire kind of thing. So may I ask you one or two, seek your indulgence to give you one-line definitions on certain very, very hot terms. Secularism.
Always pseudo, never real.
Socialism.
Past its time.
Dissent.
Dissent is integral to India's philosophical, cultural, civilizational life. Shastrartha is integral to Indian thinking. So dissent is an integral part of our life, our politics, our life. We should have tolerance for dissent.
Left ideology.
Oh, you mentioned about oxymoron. Left ideology, I would say left is left with no ideology but power.
Oh, then rightism.
Pardon?
Rightism.
Rightism is the right thing for the country. That is the right thing for the country.
Wokeism.
wokeism is no-ism. It is no-ism. It's a fad. Just a fad.
So thank you, Dr. Madhav. I think we have time for 4 minutes for a few questions. So audience, from the audience.
The dais is open for questions. Volunteers, please hand over the mics.
Dr. Madhav, almost everything you said I disagree with, but I want to sincerely thank you for saying it all, because it helps me understand people like you, and I'm honestly grateful for that, because maybe you are fed up of the divides in the country, I'm also fed up of them, and I want to see some bridges between those divides. But having said that, I want to just make one little point.
How many fed-ups are on which side is important?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can decide.
Your question,
that.
please.
But I was making notes, and you said something about Gandhi. You said that when Mr. Prasannan asked you, he used to go around saying, Ishwar, Allah, Allah Tero Naam, and you asked him, how did it help him? And I thought you were going to talk about something else, but you mentioned Jinnah, who partitioned the country. But Dr. Madhav, there was a man called Godse who actually killed Gandhi, despite him. So how did it help him in that case? How did the...
So, sir, one of the saddest parts of that time of history was Godse's act.
One sec. Godse from the RSS.
Godse was not from the RSS. Godse was not.
RSS always denied that.
Now, okay.
Madhav answered the question.
You were
please.
supposed to ask a question. I understand your statement. Your question, I am correcting you. This is an old myth that you communists propagated all the time. That Godse was from. You are not a communist. Good to know that. Good to know that.
Sir, let Dr. Madhav answer the question. You asked the question.
No, for you, Godse did not divide India. Godse killed Gandhi, which is a bad act. If you want to know, I can tell the whole history of India's independence movement. I have written a book, Partition Freedom, whole history, but time doesn't permit here. In the given time, I told you that did not help. Because India was partitioned on 1947 in spite of Gandhi's efforts. In spite of efforts by many others. Patel tried, Nehru tried, but they could not prevent it. You know, Nehru called it fantastic nonsense. He could not prevent it. So much has happened. What Jinnah did, what Godse did was a heinous crime. He was punished for it. He was hanged.
Yeah. The young gentleman here in the front.
Sir, thank you for the time. Since there's an absence of a proper white paper regarding the national security, 2 questions from my side.
I'll be grateful if you could confine to one.
It would be
short.
short.
Yes.
Since the establishment of India as a state, the primary mandate in regards of the defense and foreign policy of the Prime Minister was to prevent two-front war or a two-front theater between China and Pakistan. So right now, I'd like to believe that we are in a state of truce and not a state of peace, because that's what is existing between India and China. Because let's be realistic, same is also the case with Pakistan. Do you think, is there any plan for Narendra Modi government to progress with it? Like, is there a plan to establish peace instead of truce? That's my one question. And the second one is about, should and if there's a Taiwan contingency, will India be able to remain neutral? Because neutrality only exists as long as it benefits us, and in case of a Taiwan contingency, it no longer benefits us.
Okay, see, about your second question, it's about certain strategic issues, what will happen. And strategy is never disclosed. So we will cross the bridge when we reach there. When the situation comes, what to do, the people in the strategic establishment, they know. But as far as first question is concerned, India always strove for peace, remember. We always wanted peace, but not the peace of a graveyard. And you keep provoking me, I have to be peaceful. That is not the kind of peace that India will entertain anymore. We want peace, but peace from the point of strength. That's why I said we will be proactive in diplomatic relations with China, but we will also be strong on the ground. That will be our approach for restoring peace.
Third and last question. The gentleman.
My name is Rajil.
My question, India's diversity in terms of languages, religions and cultures shapes the idea of being Indian. Is this a sense of strengthens or challenges? India's diversity based on in terms of religions, cultures and shapes the idea of being Indian. Is this challenges or strengthens the sense of unified Indian identity?
No, this diversity is our beauty. That's how we look at it. It's our beauty. Nobody should try to erase this diversity. But remember, always harping on diversity, the fad of our left liberal friends. Diversity, talk about diversity. What about the innate unity? Do you also talk about it? Do you also talk about the thousands of years this country existed, remained as one? Do you know something? You are all from Kerala. When the states were to be integrated in India, they were asked to join the Indian Dominion. The princely states here, in fact, one of them had to abandon their constitution. Some history happened, I am not going into that, not a very pleasant history, but it had to abandon its constitution, give up its constitution and join the Indian Union. Because the emphasis was on unity. There was a unity that existed within this diversity. Remember that unity also, then diversity is not a problem. But only talk about diversity, not talking about unity, because unity means communalism, unity means wrong. That is not the correct approach as far as we are concerned.
Dr. Madhav, this is
Thank you.
direct question to you. What you mean about Indianization? Indianization.
Very old issue. In 1960s, Balraj Mathok, the then president of Bharatiya Janasangh, authored a book called Indianization, by which he meant that, this feeling of oneness, irrespective of this diversity, irrespective of diversity, we have been one country, one people for millennia, for thousands of years. That should be inculcated in this society. That's what he meant by that book, Indianization. If that is the meaning, we stand for it. We all should feel that we are one people. Not just an issue here. This is the issue everywhere. I mentioned about America. That whole identity that America as one people. In fact, people like Samuel Huntington authored books that we have to find actually a kind of a definition for being an American. Today we say we are a melting pot, sambar. We should not remain a melting pot. We have to become one nation with one common identity. That issue of common identity for all the peoples without destroying the diverse identities that multiple identities that people hold is what Indianization always meant for us, right from Balraj Mathok to now. But some people used to call it this Hinduization. No, it's not any religious sense. It's in the sense of cultural, civilizational, national identity.
So we have to come to an end of this now. Thank you very much. It has been a truly engaging discussion. And I think as Stan indicated, you are an exception to what that oxymoron I mentioned. Thank you very much.